John, hello.
Oh, thanks very much, Nick. I think it's a great show.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm a Christian. I'm white, but I've spent 3 years reading the Quran, and all I'd say is that I'd back up the last caller. The Quran actually has deep respect for Christianity. Jesus mentioned about 76 times in the Quran. He is revered. Whenever Muslims talk about Muhammad, they will say, peace be upon him immediately thereafter. They do the same for Jesus. Right? I don't remember the last time when a Christian said, peace be upon Muhammad. In fact, it's quite the opposite.
Let's go to Abdul from the Midlands. Hello, Abdul.
Hi, Nick.
Hi.
It's my first time calling in. I was just thinking through, actually, and it was your caller, Lawrence, who's prompted me to...
Right, OK, yes. He's prompted a lot of messages.
Yeah, so I just want to talk about what Lawrence said earlier about my religion, Islam, and obviously he mentioned that he believes that all Muslims are terrorists. You obviously expressed that you completely disagree with him and you think that only he holds that view, but in my opinion, I think that is becoming a more and more open view being held by non-Muslims. The atmosphere in the UK and the Western and the wider Western world is what I feel becoming more and more hostile towards Muslims.
Look, can I just correct you on one point, Abdul? And it's not contentious. I think the world is becoming more hostile. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, you speak to, and I'm not talking just about the rise in hate for Jewish people. You're talking about effectively Islamophobia. Hate seems to be the default opening position in so many issues. And in part, I understand that because of the violence and the horrors we've all seen and so forth. But anyway, sorry, Abdul, carry on with your point.
So I mean, I was born in the UK, been raised here, schooled here. You know, this is what I consider my home. But I'm seriously now considering moving out of the UK because it just feels so hostile, and moving to somewhere where, you know, there wouldn't be as much hostility towards people of my faith, or, you know, people wouldn't have such a distorted view of Muslims.
Well, can I ask you a distorted view? And I got a bit of criticism for closing this caller down only as it happens, despite what Gary Worthing is saying to me now because of time. She said it's actually written in the Quran, in the Islamic faith, that it's basically the duty of those who follow that faith to basically kill Christians.
No, that's an incorrect interpretation of what my religion teaches us.
And yet some will interpret it who have evil means, like are members of ISIS and so forth, won't they? That's the point.
The Quran was obviously revealed 1,400 years ago, and circumstances were very different then. This is what we have to remember, that certain verses were revealed at a time of war, and therefore there are certain verses that do say that combat is legitimate, but only when you are defending yourself.
Well, I don't know my Bible, but I would be surprised there's something in the Bible about where did onward Christian soldiers come from. I don't know. I don't want to get into a religious debate. But can I ask you a question?
Neither do I, to be honest. But I suppose what I just want to do is express that this... I think that it's becoming more and more apparent that a lot of people don't seem to have much knowledge of what Islam teaches. And of course, a religion can teach something, but it's on the follower to follow that. Now, the follower won't always implement the principles of that religion, but people will look at them and say, well, he calls himself a Muslim and he's killing people, therefore that's what the religion teaches, but we know that that's not right.
No, of course I can understand that point. Let me ask you a question though, because part of the problem is that we've had some people come onto this show, some Muslims, some not, who've basically found it impossible to condemn the act of terror that took place in Israel. Would you find it difficult?
I I don't find that difficult at all.
So I don't...
Killing innocent civilians is completely prohibited in our religion. Our Prophet taught us that to kill one innocent person is the equivalent of killing the whole of humanity. And to save one person's life is the equivalent of saving the whole of humanity. So that's where we derive our principles from. It's not difficult for me to, but my caveat to that is that all civilians killed is wrong.
Well, because you prefaced it with what you said, I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree with you about how you've done it. What I can't stomach too happily without challenging is when people say only killing of all civilians is wrong. We cannot lose our humanity over what happened in Israel, whatever our views of Israel and what it's done in other areas. I'm critical of Israel myself. Abdul, look, a really good call. Thank you very much. Please call me again whenever I'm next on, because I was grateful for your thoughts and interpretation. Just time to take a call from John in Sheffield. John, hello.
Oh, thanks very much, Nick. I think it's a great show.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm a Christian. I'm white, but I've spent 3 years reading the Quran, and all I'd say is that I'd back up the last caller. The Quran actually has deep respect for Christianity. Jesus mentioned about 76 times in the Quran. He is revered. Whenever Muslims talk about Muhammad, they will say peace be upon him immediately thereafter. They do the same for Jesus. Right? I don't remember the last time when a Christian said peace be upon Muhammad. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So there is a real disjuncture here, and I don't think people really understand the Quran at all. And it's not some kind of militaristic creed. The notion of jihad also means to do a good deed, and that's usually how it's understood. It's not some kind of call to arms.
Look, you've articulated it really well, and I'm kind of pleased to finish on that, because it brings a certain sense of balance and perspective to it. I'm grateful. I just want to ask you one very quick question, if I may, John.
Sure.
Lack of knowledge is a key problem in many walks of life. Do you think churches or religious groups, Muslim, Christian, do enough to try and educate other people, even if they're not worried, even if people aren't not to seek to convert them, but to try and explain, rather than have a vacuum of information which is then exploited by horrific terrorists?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I certainly don't support what's gone on under Hamas in Israel, not for 1 minute. But there are no binaries in this world, despite far left-wing thinking that would tell us that there are. If you support Israel, then you hate Palestine. If you support Palestine, hate Israel. It's nonsense. The world is full of greys. Bottom line is, I think Islam is a more inclusive religion than Christianity, even though I'm a Christian. It accepts the Torah, the Jewish Bible, accepts the Gospels, it accepts, obviously, the Quran. I don't see the same thing reciprocated by Christian groups.
OK, listen, John, thank you very much indeed. And thank you to all our callers. I've got to say, I'm going to just touch on this message from Gary in Worthing, or it's Gary Worthing, I'm not sure. Nick, you may not think you close callers down if you don't like their views, but you do. No, I really don't. I did eventually in Lawrence, I did, but my God, he got loads of airtime. And Marion, because time ran out, and I've explained that, we have cutouts when we have to come out. We are all allowed an opinion, you go on to say. You are not the judge of these and should facilitate those views being in the public forum. TalkTV prides itself on this, but views are not incite, but what incites is not yours to judge. Now, look, that perfectly valid comments to make, but the reality is, I have never known a show when there has been more diverse opinions that are expressed on this on this. Maybe I'll throw a shoe on this show, Gary. It really is probably the one show we shouldn't be challenged for actually having a multiplicity of views. But as ever, with every single caller, and there have been many, and messages, I think we've given you airtime. I think we've had a lively debate, a fair debate, a debate that, frankly, sometimes might have got a little difficult, but that makes, I think, us all a little bit wiser, and I'm hugely grateful to you.